1-866-957-2874. Stacy on the right with Stacy Washington on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight. We are also now joined by Issac Willour. He is an award-winning journalist, political science student, minoring in psychology at Grove City College, Young Voices contributor at Issac Willour on X. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Stacy. Good to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here because we have a lot to discuss. There's been a lot of discussion in media everywhere. It's online. You can't get away from it. DEI. Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate. She's a DEI VP. Meanwhile, we're told that DEI is the cat's meow. We should all love it. But if you say someone is DEI or they're a DEI hire candidate, it's taken as an insult. So how should we talk about this? Or more specifically, how should President Trump talk about this?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting – those are two very interesting questions, Stacey. Let's start with the first one. Let's talk about what a DEI hire is. Or more accurately, let's talk about what the term DEI hire is. So if you listen to or you take a look at the DNC playbook right now, you would think that the term DEI hire is synonymous with some kind of awful ethnic slur, right? The idea is that we can't call anybody a DEI hire because that's deeply racist, that's deeply demeaning to someone's ethnicity. That's, if you read this in a charitable or, as a DEI critic, I would argue, a rational lens, the term DEI hire is not synonymous with someone's race. The term DEI hire is a tactical accusation against someone that they have used or been more passively the beneficiary of a system in which racial characteristics matter. So you think about Harvard, you think about UNC, or you can think about, for purposes of what we're talking about, you think about the vice presidential selection process in Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, where he said that he would pick a woman. He was heavily urged to pick a black woman. There's a quote from James Clyburn at the time that black women need to be rewarded for their loyalty, which is very offensive and, in my mind, much more tokenizing and dehumanizing than being called a DEI hire. So, yeah, I think that's step one, right? We have to realize that the term DEI hire, despite what we were told by some, is not, in fact, a racist term. But then it's the question of what Trump has to do. Let's talk about these two different playbooks. You have the Harris 2024 playbook and you have the Trump 2024 playbook. The Harris 2024 playbook is very, very different than the campaign she tried to run in 2020 to clinch the Democratic primary, right? What she has to do now is a couple of things. She has to run in such a way to appeal to moderates, right? She has to manage to play tough, right? She used to be a prosecutor. She has to play tough with one of the greatest trash talkers in the game, who is Trump. And she has to distance herself from the less than shining parts of Joe Biden's record as president, including the border, as much as humanly possible. That is the Harris 2024 playbook. The Trump 2024 playbook, conversely, unsurprisingly, is to run exactly the opposite. You have to paint her as a radical, right? This is a radical person who hangs out with other radical people in a very radical way. You have to paint her as weak. You can paint her as soft on crime. You can paint her as incompetent at handling the border. You have to highlight the unavoidable fact, and Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance pointed this out on X or Twitter, as we really should all be calling it. We have to highlight the fact that Kamala Harris was part of the Democratic gambit to pretend that Joe Biden was completely mentally fine and healthy and ready to take on Trump and run the country for 4 more years, up until like 3 weeks ago when the left-wing media realized what everybody else has realized for the past quite a few years, that was not, in fact, the case. We have to highlight the fact that Kamala Harris was a part of that. That speaks to her quality as a candidate and her ability to really run a moral and ethical campaign and her ability to be a moral and ethical leader. You'll notice that none of these things have to do with race.
Well, they don't. I'm so tired. She's black. She's Indian. She's a woman. Her pronouns are she and her. Did I cover it? That's it.
She's sitting at a table wearing a blue suit, if you recall that one video.
Yellow buses are sometimes small. And Russia's a big country. And
super great. And it's next to another country. Yeah, it's
next
all the
to
most
another.
terrible thing ever.
Oh,
this is my problem, right? And the issue is The Trump campaign, I do not remember who pointed this out. This is not original to me, but I saw it and I think it's exactly right. The Trump campaign is now watching this big reinvigoration of the Harris campaign. This is what Democratic campaign machines do when they don't have really old senile candidates. They're very well oiled. They bring in celebrities. They bring in pop culture. They leverage everything. And yes, they're incredibly competitive, right? Donald Trump likely will not be able to run away with a victory over Kamala Harris in the way that he would run away with a victory over Joe Biden, because there's simply different candidates. Kamala Harris, for her polling, is polling a lot closer to generic Democrat than the way Joe Biden was polled, because she's not old. She's not senile. She can walk up flights of steps without falling over. This is a much more intimidating and serious candidate, and whoever Kamala Harris picks as her VP candidate will lock in how serious she really is about running a really formidable campaign, and we can talk about those if you'd like.
I would like, because here's what I know, and I'm not speaking like, some people can say I'm a seasoned campaign operative. I've been doing this job for a long time, like radio, broadcast, comms, that type of thing. But as far as being on the inside of a political campaign, I've only done that a couple of times. A gubernatorial race here locally, a little bit of campaign surrogacy and stuff like that in 2020 for Trump 2020. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I know enough to maybe be dangerous in some aspects, but I read a lot. I'm reading the thought leaders, right? I'm looking at what's being said, and I know what makes sense to me. I know what sounds right, and I know what the policy is. So the difference between me and some of the other people that are trying to start slap fights with me on Instagram and X is that I actually know the policy, and I can list off for you from memory the accomplishments that President Trump was able to get under his belt, fighting not just the deep state, but most of the Republican Party as well. And he was still able to bring a very high quality of advanced society and lifestyle to Americans without war. There was a lot that he brought to the table as a non-politician. And so for me, I keep thinking, how can we talk about this? And I don't mean DEI. Like I literally think summing it up is, every time it's brought up, President Trump should say, Kamala Harris uses the pronouns she and her. She is of Indian and African American or Indian and Black descent, Indian and Dominican Republican descent. And she is a far left Democrat. And here's the policies that she has that are in contrast to mine. And I mean, every time it's brought up, well, you said she's a DEI hire. What's wrong with her being a DEI hire? You like DEI. You all are the ones who brought it to us. If you don't like the label, why do you keep pushing it on corporate America and education and even in the private sector on people who, they're just walking around buying their groceries at Trader Joe's and they have to scream their pronouns out? Why are you forcing DEI on us if you don't like the label? That's how to shut this thing down. I think it's been a complete wasted week this week, because all that people have been asking him about are J6 and his comments on her being a DEI hire, which is actually a quote from President Biden. He didn't use the word DEI, but he did say, I'm choosing my running mate. She's going to be Black and a woman. That's what he said. Yeah. So he didn't say, I'm choosing someone because they're a prosecutor or because they are a lawyer, because they have so much time in government. I'm choosing someone who's a governor of a state so that they have the executive branch experience to run because I'm only going to serve one term. He didn't say any of those things. And even after he chose her, he didn't say it. He didn't say, she's an experienced prosecutor. She's prosecuted 1,500 men for marijuana violations. She kept them in jail longer than they should have to squeeze extra work out of them. She's a comer. She's a buzzsaw. She's a hammer. Sure. She'll come after you. Yeah. He didn't say any of that. He said she's Black and she's a woman. That's it.
So let's look at this tactically, right? So as it stands let's back up to right before that first debate, or right after that first presidential debate, the really, really bad one. The really, really bad one is not specific at all. It could be any presidential debate. It's happened in the past 25 years. But when Trump was running against Biden, the major plus that Trump had and the Trump campaign had in their corner was they can have most voters perceive that because of incumbency, they can have voters perceive this election as a referendum on Joe Biden. This election is no longer, by an increasing number of people, this election is no longer being seen as a referendum on Joe Biden. If you look at the campaign material coming out from the DNC, if you look at the things that Kamala Harris is saying, right? You mentioned that Joe Biden never talked about her being a prosecutor. That's true, but she is now, right? they are leveraging everything in their power to make this election a referendum on Donald Trump. And the problem with the thing you just suggested about you need to talk about her changing her race tactically or changing the way she refers to race tactically and all these kinds of things.
No, I don't want him to talk about that.
That's not
I might not have been clear. Okay. I want him to say, basically, they bring it up to him. And I feel he should acknowledge the reality. These are what we know about Kamala from her own words. I don't know why you're bringing this up to me. I want to talk about policy, right? The most he should say about it is, yes, these things are true. And I have no problem with them because how can I? These, right?
Really, really bad. This is something that Trump has always historically struggled with, is talking about policy as opposed to being a kind of a troll person, which is troll person has garnered him some sympathy. It's garnered him a lot of pop culture immortality. But you have to remember, the Trump that we saw at this RNC, the one who was talking about unity in America and that kind of thing, that is not the perception, A, of how a center or center-left leaning independent views Trump, and two, that's not the way he walks around 99% of the time. If you want to beat Kamala Harris, you have to talk about – I totally understand, one, to highlight the hypocrisy of DEI stuff. Trust me, I do it all the time. I'm a corporate analyst. I look at DEI with America's largest companies all the time. Totally with you on that. But let's think – but in the sense of if the Democratic Party and the DNC campaign machine succeeds in making this election a referendum on Donald Trump needs to be focusing on providing a positive vision to the country, not merely a negative vision of Kamala Harris. I think a positive vision for America paints a very negative view for people who hold the same ideological beliefs that Kamala Harris does, right? Because like Kamala Harris is not a good candidate for president of the United States, and the reason for this, and I mentioned this on Fox a couple of days ago. The reason for this actually has comparatively little to do with being a DEI hire or Willie Brown or any of that kind of thing. The primary reason Kamala Harris is not a good candidate for president of the United States is because her vision of America is guided by a belief in progressive ideology and the power of the state to fix justice and help the marginalized. And that is a very debatable contention. And in some cases, it is a simply wrong contention. If Trump's smart, he'll focus on that. Unfortunately, Trump also has a habit of running his mouth. He needs to stop that. This has always been his campaign problem. If we went in a time machine, if you and I hopped in a time machine, went to the RNC like a couple weeks ago, got Trump by the foot, put him in the time machine and brought him back, and we just ran that Trump until November, he would win. Not even a question. Unfortunately, that is not the Trump that always shows up.
Do you have a time machine? Is something you want to tell us here? We'll get
that's
together offline. Let's discuss this offline.
It sits in the basement. We have the patent's pending.
Well, I'm tossing my quarter in. Please put me in line to use the time machine. I have issues. I want
quarter,
to
please,
address.
Stacy, it's all Bitcoin. Welcome to 2024.
Bitcoin. Okay. Well, I got a son who can help me with that. He's into Bitcoin. I have people. I definitely have people. But I mean, all joking aside, you said you were talking about this on Fox. I'm glad. I'm really glad that you're bringing this cogent, absolutely brilliant analysis, because my issue with all of what we're seeing right now is this is the way the Democrats play. They're ruthless. They play hardball. And they saw Joe Biden faltering, and they got rid of him, not because he had cognitive decline or they wanted to help him or they want to save America, because they want to win. And so we have to act the same way. And so out of everything you said, I can't disagree with you, because what we need the most is for Americans to be where they are. We don't have to take them anywhere new. They're already ticked off about prices, costs, mortgage rates, inflation. They're ticked off about the money going to Ukraine. They hate their tax burden. They want someone to actually talk to them about the things that they care about, crime, the southern border. I know there's a lot of wiggle room between, your far left progressive and someone on the right who just wants to see cogent immigration policy, meaning a sovereign nation who has a border and a functioning, immigration system. There's a lot of room between those viewpoints. But everyone seems to agree at this point, according to the polls, that people who are in the country illegally should be deported, not rewarded for breaking our laws, and that we need to work on getting our crime situation back under control. So I'm very concerned about not talking about the things that voters are concerned with, because I think whenever Trump talks about what voters are concerned with, he sounds like the adult in the room, and he wins voters. When Kamala tries to talk about these things, she flounders. She's very weak on that because she doesn't know what she's talking about because she's a far leftist. She believes in open borders. She believes in giving illegal aliens the same benefits as Americans and taking care of their health insurance and everything else. That's where the conversation has to go. How does he get it there?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I'll go back to the positive vision thing, right? So right after Kamala Harris won the vice presidency, she sent out this tweet back when we called them tweets. Life was better. She sends out this tweet that she says, "I hope every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities." First of all, she's in the middle of a party that cannot tell you what a little girl is if you ask. But second of all, and more importantly, America's young women and men and everybody, I would hope they would all see that their lives contain far brighter possibilities than the career path that Kamala Harris has chosen to go down, and the values that she has chosen to espouse, and the anthropology of the human person that she has chosen to promulgate. These are not good things. Americans can do much better than this kind of ideology. How does Trump bring it back? Trump has to actually be a conservative person with a conservative anthropology and a healthy view of what American public life can be. Kamala Harris does not represent that. You can look at her record as a prosecutor. You can look at her record on criminal justice. It is mixed, to put it very nicely. Trump can be the adult in the room. We have seen him do it, not nearly as often as we'd like, but we have seen him do it. If Trump can stop talking about – if you want Democrats to stop talking about January 6th, then I do too. We also have to acknowledge that Trump needs to talk about election fraud less, because these things are reactant. These things bounce off one another. Trump needs to be able to take the high road, which is, again, it's no one's first tendency. It's no one's tendency to take the high road immediately. But you have to remember, the party that is ready to put Kamala Harris to victory is the party that is used to figures like Obama and who can talk about the high road and take the high road and then do none of those things, right? I don't mean that we have to refuse to engage with Democrats on the issues. Obviously, that's not true. We have to engage them on the issues. But we can't just do mudslinging. We have to provide. Donald Trump has to provide. He's a candidate for president of the United States, right? He is going to sit potentially once more in the same office that Lincoln and Reagan stood in, right? This is a moment for a positive vision for America because Kamala Harris is a dyed-in-the-wool progressive. This is just true. And if we can't get around to that, if we just want to talk about, well, she's Indian and then she's black and she's Jamaican, if you want to get hung up on that, and I know some people in the media sphere who are really, really hung up on that because that gets them Twitter clicks and they microdose on dopamine and everyone's super happy, you can do that. But just be aware, we're making zero electoral progress, and we're convincing zero people in the middle that the non-progressive way of life, the non-progressive way to get to the White House, the non-progressive way to lead America forward into the future is not one of mudslinging, but it's a world of values. It's a world of American goodness, of a belief in the potential for American greatness, and it's a belief that duty matters and that principles matter and that virtues matter. And that is a very difficult thing for Donald Trump to defend, but it is absolutely imperative that he defends it. This election is his to lose. Let's hope this goes well.
Okay, so I'll tell you, this is what I was looking up earlier today. And we're so in, like, we have a unimind going on here. We're the Wonder Twins. We've our rings have touched. You know, this is old. This is from the 1900s. You're a little young for this analogy, but I'm going with it. We're the Wonder Twins right now. Here's what I just for some reason I jumped over to Pew Research, and they have a headline over there. 75% of Americans have this kind of, it's like a negative view, this is something that people are literally like. This is something we should capitalize on. And the reason is because it indicates exactly what you've said. It says 72% of Americans say the U.S. used to be a good example of democracy, but isn't anymore. This is according to Pew Research. This is a recent one, not from like 2019. And it makes me think of when President Barack Obama said America is not exceptional. And so what I feel like people are looking for is the same thing I want. I want a presidential candidate to come to the podium and say, America is exceptional, and basically put the stop It's a full stop on what Barack Obama unleashed on us, the way we accepted it, the way we bowed our heads and said, yeah, you're right, we're not exceptional, that we would raise our heads back up and say, you know what, actually we are. Why are people breaking into this country to come live here? They'll live here illegally for 30 years and not say a word about it because it's exceptional, because this place is great. The candidate who says this country is exceptional, that we are a good example of democracy, that we are aspirational, that there are hopeful, positive, concrete policies, prescriptions, that we can bring back net zero inflation and low unemployment and a freedom to unleash people to start businesses and move into the neighborhood they want to live in and take their kids into the school district they want to be in and take vacations or start a business or get a degree or whatever it is that they are aspiring to. And I think President Trump has given America, a southern border that was sealed, low interest rates, low inflation, less foreign entanglements. It was less war. It was peace in the Middle East. I think he can do that again. The Democrats are offering fatalistic, hateful rhetoric. They're offering fear-mongering and obsession with abortion and gender ideology. These are not mainstream things. I think if Trump talks aspirationally about this country and what he wants to give this country, the focus goes back to the bottom line, the thing that people are talking to the Pew researchers about when they talk about the top 10 issues. Abortion and all the stuff that Democrats are talking about don't even make the top 10. I believe, exactly as you do, that an aspirational Trump, who we've seen before, we know it's in him. He's got a lot of things in him, actually. He's kind of multifaceted in that way. He lets that bubble up to the surface and keeps it there, and he rides into November. He wins this thing hugely, bigly, as he would say. He wins because people are desperate for that. They're hungry for it. We can't get 75% of Americans to agree on anything. And 72% of them say the U.S. used to be a good example of democracy, but isn't anymore. That's the meat of it right there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm not a huge poll person. I use the futures market because I work in political finance now, and we're all super wonky. We don't like polls. But there's one poll that I do talk about on occasion, which is the right direction, which is the right track, wrong track poll. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? Is America on the right track or wrong track? It's 2/3 of Americans think that the country is on the wrong track.
And you know what? We have to leave it there
has ramifications for the party in power.
I hear the music. And you actually wrapped up perfectly. I can tell you do this for a living, as well as the other fantastic things. You've been great to join us tonight. Thank you so much for your time. So grateful. And we'll talk to you again.
Stacy, thanks so much for having me.
All right. That was Issac Willour. We got to have him on again, award-winning journalist. We will be back with you another day. God bless you and have a great weekend.